A man accused of killing his Uber driver will be held on his charges. He's also facing new ones in another case.
Police say he admitted to killing a random rideshare driver recently just to blow off some steam.
Sanchez told detectives he had his girlfriend order the Uber because he wanted to let off steam due to so much stress. Sanchez also told police that he wanted to take out his stress on, quote, anybody he could see or find.
An Uber driver picked up his passenger, unaware that the man in his backseat would end his life. What follows unleashes an investigation more disturbing than you could ever imagine. Hi, I'm Katie Ring, a true crime analyst, self-defense instructor, and fierce advocate for victims. And this is Crime House Daily, your essential true crime companion every weekday, morning and night, powered by Pave Studios. Here at Crime House Daily, we will be taking an investigative approach to true crime. We will be staying on the cases and trials making headlines now, where justice is still in motion, arrests are still being made, and where new evidence is still coming to light. This is a First Watch episode, our morning show, making sure you're up to speed on today's biggest crimes. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Crime House Daily. This episode discusses active criminal cases and breaking news. The information we share is based on what's publicly available at the time of recording and may change as new evidence comes to light. We aim to inform here, not to decide guilt or innocence, so everyone mentioned is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Today, we're covering two major cases making headlines. To start things off, we're breaking down a case that continues to unravel as we speak, where an 18-year-old killed his Uber driver. The reason? To let off some steam. And according to the suspect, this wasn't his first violent crime. And next, we'll be breaking down the heartbreaking case of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro. Two suspects are in custody right now, facing first-degree murder charges. But with an arrest made, the questions only grow. What really happened to baby Emanuel and why? Before we get into our main stories, we want to talk about a couple cases we've been keeping an eye on. Over in Illinois, a 93-year-old man is being held in jail as we speak for slashing his 80-year-old wife's throat. He told authorities they got in an argument in the car and that he, quote, couldn't take it anymore. It's not often you see a 93-year-old man commit a crime this violent, so we'll keep you posted on any updates ahead of his trial. In North Carolina, comedian and Last Comic Standing winner John Reep is currently awaiting trial. He was arrested and charged with 10 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. Officers received a cyber tip that contained child sex abuse material, or as we call it, CSAM, which is linked to Reep's IP address. The Crime House team will be on the lookout for any updates on John Reep's case. But in the meantime, tune in to our social channels at Crime House 24/7 for breaking developments. To this day, there's still so much to learn about this first case, but let's unpack from the beginning. Just a little over a month ago. This story takes place in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where a young man has confessed to murdering his Uber driver, and the details we know so far are chilling. Because according to the suspect, his only reason for committing this crime was to, quote, let off some steam. And if the prosecutors on this case are right, it's only the tip of the iceberg. According to them, he's confessed to 3 other murders, and more information could come out any day. Let's start with the event that sent this chilling case into motion. It's Thursday, August 7th, 2025. 18-year-old Sheliky Sanchez is hanging out at his home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's early in the morning and he's restless. He's been feeling really stressed lately, and he decides he needs to get out of the house and clear his head. So he texts his girlfriend and says he wants to come over and see her. But he doesn't have a car, so he tells her to order him an Uber. Not sure why he couldn't call his own Uber, but his girlfriend does what he asks, calls an Uber, and shares the ride details. But when Sanchez sees the driver's information, he tells his girlfriend to cancel the ride and get a new one. Without questions, she calls him another Uber. He does this over and over again until he finally sees a driver he likes. His name is Joseph. He looks young and he's got a friendly smile. Shortly after, Joseph pulls up outside and Sanchez gets into the car. Joseph is just as nice as his photo makes him look. He starts making small talk with his passenger, and despite his bad mood, Sanchez is happy to chat. But despite Joseph's warm nature, Sanchez still feels tense and his stress levels keep rising. But he does a good job hiding it because Joseph doesn't seem to notice that anything's off. In fact, he's caught completely off guard when the young man in the back seat suddenly orders him to stop the car. At this point, I can imagine Joseph was probably confused and even a little scared, but tried to calm him down. But something must be really wrong with Sanchez because he demands Joseph pull the car over. When Joseph follows his command and pulls over, Sanchez pulls out a gun and tells him to get out of the car. Joseph listens, but it's not enough to save him. Sanchez pulls the trigger multiple times, then hops into Joseph's car and speeds off. Meanwhile, local residents hear the gunshots go off and call 911. Officers race to the scene, but they're too late. Joseph is already dead. They're able to identify him as 30-year-old Joseph Andrus. His car is nowhere to be seen, and there weren't any witnesses to his murder, which means a killer is on the loose in Albuquerque. Investigators move quickly from there. They obtain Joseph's vehicle records and send out a citywide alert. Most likely, they also obtain Uber records to figure out who Joseph's last customer was. Pretty soon, someone spots Joseph's car outside a residence. It's the home of Sheliky Sanchez's girlfriend. A SWAT team quickly gathers around the property, and once officers are in position, they storm in. They survey the house, and it seems like they determine pretty quickly that Sanchez is their guy because they immediately take him into custody. They completed their mission and arrested a potentially violent killer before he could strike again. But they quickly realized Sanchez may have already left more than one death in his wake. While in the interrogation room, the teenager confesses almost instantly. But the more he talks, the more he sends a shiver down detective spines. First, they want to know why Sanchez allegedly killed an innocent man, a man he didn't even know. He talks about the murder like it is a normal, everyday thing. He tells investigators that he was stressed out and needed to, quote, let off steam. So he went looking for anyone, to kill. The investigators are understandably put off by his response. They want to know why Sanchez viewed murder as an outlet. That's when Sanchez's comments get even more disturbing. He says that the feeling he gets from killing someone is, quote, beautiful, and that it helps him sleep at night. This confession raises major alarms for detectives. Has Sanchez killed before? Is this not his first victim? And when they ask him if he has killed anyone before, he admits that he has. Sanchez says that when he was in middle school, he killed 3 people. And he hints at a deeper motive for those murders because he adds that Joseph seemed like a cool guy and that he, quote, doesn't really go for good people. It's possible that Sanchez simply has an uncontrollable penchant for violence because he also tells investigators that a few months earlier, in May of 2025, he fell into a drunken rage and held his 7-year-old brother at gunpoint. Sanchez told his brother not to tell anyone about the incident, so it seems like his confession is the first time anyone learned about it. Now that authorities know just how dangerous Sanchez is, they're determined to stop him from hurting anyone else. So, for killing Joseph Andrus, Sanchez is charged with first-degree murder, armed robbery, and tampering with evidence. For what he did to his younger brother, he's charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, child abuse, and witness intimidation. A judge ruled that he be held without bond. As for the 3 alleged murders from Sanchez's past, those are still under investigation. But hopefully, he is charged for each of those murders as well, so those victims can finally get justice. Joseph Andrus's friends and family spoke to the press about how he had just graduated from college in July, something that was a lifelong dream of his. They also held a candlelight vigil for him on August 16th, which would have been his 31st birthday. Considering that Sheliky Sanchez has already confessed to Joseph's murder, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this case plays out in court. We'll be sure to keep you updated. And in our next story, we'll get into another case about a senseless tragedy. But in this case, the suspects aren't accused of killing a total stranger. Their alleged victim is their own child. Back in mid-August, a couple in Southern California seemingly endured one of the most painful things that can happen to a parent when their 7-month-old baby was allegedly kidnapped. But there's a lot more to this story because Rebecca and Jake Haro are now suspected of murder, and they're going through those legal proceedings as we speak. But before we dive into the events, let me introduce you to the family that is at the center of it all, the Haros. The parents are 41-year-old Rebecca and 32-year-old Jake. Rebecca has a 16-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter from previous relationships, and Jake has a 7-year-old daughter from a previous relationship as well. They also share a 7-month-old son, Emanuel. According to Rebecca and Jake, on August 14th, 2025, they went to a local park in the city of Yucaipa, California, about 10 miles outside of San Bernardino. It is a quiet community set against a backdrop of beautiful mountains and rolling hills. Rebecca and Jake are at the park for Rebecca's son's football practice, and they brought baby Emanuel along with them. At some point, Rebecca has to get her older son something from a nearby sporting goods store, so she drives over there and takes baby Emanuel with her. And as soon as Rebecca parks her car outside of the store, she realizes that the baby needs a diaper change. So she gets him out of his car seat and lays him down in the back of the car. Then she walks back around to the side of the car to grab the diaper bag. And that's when Rebecca is attacked out of the blue. Rebecca later said that a man walked up to her and said, "Hola," and then hit her over the head. She lost consciousness, and when she woke up, Emmanuel was gone. Rebecca panics. She doesn't know how much time has passed, and she has no idea who would want to hurt or take her baby. She immediately calls the police, and they waste no time launching a full-scale search. They scour the area with helicopters and tracking dogs, but there's no sign of Emmanuel or any indication of who might have taken him. Meanwhile, Rebecca and Jake go on local news to beg their son's kidnapper for his safe return, but they get no response. However, the interview did catch the attention of the public. Personally, I try not to comment on potential suspects before details of the investigation are released, but when I saw this video, there was something off, and everyone else agreed. Let's watch a clip of it now.
It's just a baby. Just give our son back, please.
Investigators are frustrated by how little they have to go on. There's not much evidence to follow, so they look at the security footage from the sporting goods store. But the sporting goods store does not have any security footage. However, the liquor store in the same parking lot did. But they don't see Rebecca or Emmanuel on the tapes anywhere. Now investigators are wondering if Rebecca fabricated the attack and actually knows what happened to baby Emmanuel and just gave them a cover story. So one day after the alleged attack, they bring her into the station and ask her to walk them through the events again. This time, her story doesn't match up to her original claim. I don't know what the exact inconsistencies are, but they are blatant enough for detectives to call Rebecca out on her changing story. And when they do, she completely shuts down. The mother, who is just on TV begging and pleading for her child back, now won't cooperate with the investigation to find him. It's super sketchy, but it's not enough to keep her at the station. Instead, they let Rebecca go and begin digging into the family's past. That's when they uncover some shocking details about the Haros. Within days of 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro's disappearance, authorities discover that his father, Jake, has hurt his own children before. Back in 2018, when his daughter from a previous relationship was just 10 weeks old, Jake beat her so badly he almost took her life. He claimed that he had just dropped her onto the sink and she split on the divider. But the girl had sustained multiple serious injuries, including a brain hemorrhage, multiple rib fractures, a cervical spine injury, retinal hemorrhages, and suffered at least 2 seizures. The authorities at the time weren't buying it, but after agreeing to a plea deal, the judge said that he wanted to give Jake another chance and suspended his 6-year prison sentence. He let him off on probation. This is a man who beat his 10-week-old baby to the verge of death, and he's let out on probation. And he just has to undergo, quote, a child abuser treatment program, and didn't serve any time behind bars. But now, in 2025, authorities aren't going to let him get away with things as easily, or Rebecca. Between the inconsistencies in her story and Jake's violent past, they're now the prime suspects in their son Emmanuel's disappearance. A few days after the search for him began, police searched the couple's home, seized their phones, obtained security footage, and bring in cadaver dogs. The officers walk away with enough evidence to arrest both parents. On August 22nd, Rebecca and Jake are arrested and held on a $1 million bond. At the same time, Emanuel still hasn't been found, and authorities need to get to the bottom of what happened to him. Despite footage of the father, Jake Haro, being spotted with authorities in what people assume was them searching for baby Emanuel's body, he still hasn't been found. Their hope of finding him alive is starting to fade, which is incredibly heartbreaking. Shortly after Rebecca and Jake are taken into custody, an undercover investigator is sent into each of their jail facilities. Both investigators have the same assignment: pose as a fellow inmate, get on the suspect's good side, and get as much information out of them as possible. Rebecca's already been caught switching up her story, so now it's a little harder to figure out the truth. Jake, however, is a little easier. The undercover officer is able to get him to reveal a whole new story. Jake claims that he rolled over onto Emanuel while sleeping and accidentally suffocated him. Then he buried the baby's body near a freeway. Investigators are initially willing to believe some of this story, but at this point, they do think that Emanuel is dead. And they bring Jake out to a field alongside a stretch of freeway he identified, where a search party looks for Emanuel's grave, but they don't find anything. Authorities lose even more trust in Jake as they hear more of what he's been telling the undercover officer. We do not know the specifics quite yet, but Jake's comments cause investigators to believe that Emanuel endured, quote, lengthy abuse from both of his parents before death, and that he had actually been dead for 9 days before Rebecca reported him missing. At this point, Rebecca and Jake have both been charged in Riverside County with first-degree murder as well as filing a false police report, and Rebecca's other children have been taken into protective custody. In their first hearing on September 4th, the couple pleaded not guilty to the murder charges, but we'll know more as the story continues to develop. Check back for episode updates and be sure to follow us at Crime House 24/7 for breaking alerts. Tonight on Night Watch, we're taking a deep dive into the story of Luigi Mangione, the man at the center of the shocking murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. We'll unpack the crime, the aftermath, and the motive behind it all, leading up to his trial. What did you think of today's case? Drop your theories in the comments and follow us at Crime House 24/7 on TikTok and Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Crime House Daily. For ad-free listening, join Crime House Plus on Apple Podcasts. You stay curious, and I'll stay on the case. See you tonight.